everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Roll call, please. No, we don't need roll call. Oh, I'm sorry. Next item, please, on the agenda. Gina, do you have it handy?
The next item is on page 2, item 1.4, consideration of an update report regarding the spring 2021 LEAP 2025 assessment results.
Thank you. Dr. Bromley.
Okay, thank you,
We need a
President.
motion first.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, motion to receive, Ms. Alice, and seconded by Dr. Davis. Thank you. Superintendent Bromley.
Thank you, President Holloway, for that. What we want to do at this time is just take a moment again and very publicly walk through the LEAP 2025 outcomes from the spring of 2021. This is certainly not new information. We have taken the opportunity to visit with all of our BESE membership on these results. We have taken the time to visit with stakeholders across the field on these results. They've been publicly released. And so what I want to do is just share at this point that from the beginning we said it was really important for us to do whatever it takes to make sure that our students take the assessments, because with those results we would be able to make decisions on policy decisions and resource allocation decisions, instructional decisions, and we made a good stand there, and we have a high percentage rate, which we'll share later. And then we also know for the first time in a couple of years, based on our standardized assessments, where our students actually are. And so I think that is really good, and that gives us a really sound body of information for decision-making purposes all the way down at that classroom level. So we'll go ahead and get started here on the results. So what you see in front of you here is a look at Louisiana up on the top, and you see that we are seeing a 4% decline from 2019 in mastery rates, mastery and above proficiency in English, and you see that double in math from 2019 to 2021 of about 8%. These are the states that have already released information on their proficiency rates. We understand that these are not apples to apples comparisons. States give different forms of assessments, but as states have reported out their proficiency rates in English and math, these are the states that have reported out to date, and you can see where we stand across those individual states. And so while we certainly have work to do, I use this slide just to illustrate that our educational community across the state of Louisiana weathered this relatively well, in my opinion, compared to other states across the nation. And there's a number of reasons behind that, but I certainly want to give credit to parents and their flexibility, to students first, but also what's happening and what happened in classrooms across our state, and the heroic work of our educators every single day. This is a look in grades 3 through 8 at participation rates. So if you look at all students on the left of your screen, you see in 2018 and 2019, about 98.3% of our students across the state assessed. So that was our participation rate, about 98.3. And then for this last year, in spring of 2021, that number is 93.4 across all students. Whenever you look at the subgroups, you see a little bit of some different information across these various subgroups. This is high school participation rates. You see again, same hold true across this. Our participation rates were higher in 2018 and 2019, lower in 2021, but we still have a sound body of information. Now we'll take a look at our actual results, outcomes. Percent mastering above by subject, grades 3 through 8. You can see 2017, 2018, and 2019 where we were in terms of ELA and math and science and social studies, and then you see the 2021 results, which of course show a decline in every content area. One of the things I would point out, and this is based on the question Mr. Morris asked in an earlier meeting, if you look at our social studies results on the far right of your screen in green, they have been consistently low. I think that our science results have been as well, but some action took place over the last few years in terms of standards and curriculum of science, so we anticipate seeing those begin to rise. And this is why it's so important that we make sure we get the social studies work right as well. This is a look at the difference in mastering above based on the time that students were actually in school. And so these results show the difference between a student who was fully in person over the course of the year versus a student who was fully virtual over the course of the year. We also have a chart that we didn't include in this particular deck that shows the decline based on students moving away from the school year and moving to fully virtual. And it's very clear that as our students move away from their schools and their teachers and their nutritional supports and their mental health supports and their friends and activities, then their academic results also fall. This is across all subjects by grade level. You see where we were in 2019 versus where we are in 2021. Percent change in students scoring mastery above by subject and grade level. You see all subjects, and then you see this by content area and by grade level. One of the things I'll point out here, which should be of significant concern to us, is the decline is greater in 3rd and 4th grade, our youngest learners. And so one of the things I think we have to recognize here is that while we have information from our statewide assessments on grade 3 and 4 that shows the decline, we presently don't have a way of measuring K1 and 2. And so I have to believe that we would see a similar fall in K1 and 2 relative to previous years. And so I just encourage educators and system leaders across the state to enter this particular school year under the assertion and under the impression that there is significant learning loss in K1 and 2 that mirrors what we're seeing in 3 and 4. Percent change in students scoring unsatisfactory, so here you see an increase. Again, across all grades, all subject areas in terms of students who are scoring unsatisfactory. Student subgroups in grades 3 through 8. Again, you see the difference between all students, and then you can tell some of the disproportionate impact that the pandemic has had in terms of outcomes of some of our students. You know, we have highlighted disproportionate impact in a number of different places, one being the subject area of math, the next being students who are virtual instruction, our youngest learners, as well as some of our student groups that also saw a disproportionate impact in terms of their outcomes. Percent change in students scoring mastery above by subgroup in grades 3 through 8. Here, again, you see those numbers fall in terms of the number of the students who are scoring at that mastery level. Percent change, again, unsatisfactory. This is where we see the increase. So consistently, mastery rates going down, unsatisfactory rates going up. District and school level performance in grades 3 through 8. How district performed over the course of those 2 years, change in students scoring mastery or above. These are systems across the state. You can tell, for instance, 14 systems saw a decline of 4 percentage points. 10 systems saw a 3-point decline. 5 saw 2. We do have a couple of systems who saw 1%. We do have a couple of systems that saw a 1% increase, and one system that held constant. This is the same chart, but this is taken to the school level. And so here you see change in number of students scoring mastery and above. You can tell where those groupings are. I will share where you see extreme outliers, both on the negative or extreme outliers to the positive. This is more than likely a change in the configuration of the school. So maybe a school went from a K2 to a K, or maybe a K4 to a K6 or something like that that changed in terms of the configuration. High school results. Here again is looking at the difference between in-person learning and virtual learning. You see it's not as significant in terms of high school as it was in the elementary grades, but still a 10-point difference. Percent mastering above, again, you see a decline here in our high school of about 5%. Percent mastering above by course, so here we're just getting into the various areas where our students take the LEAP 2025 in the course assessments from English, algebra, geometry, biology, and U.S. history. You see some of the courses, particularly algebra, saw the most significant fall, where a course such as English 2 saw not as much of a fall as some of the other subject areas. This is the Louisiana Comeback Plan that we introduced last week, and I'll save a lot of the comments around Louisiana Comeback for our meeting on Wednesday to share information there. But these are the areas where we're really looking at aggressive planning and investment over the next 10 months. We believe these are the right areas for focus over the next 10 months, making sure kids are re-engaged with their school, making sure they're well when they're there. Whenever they're there, providing additional supports for recovery and acceleration, and then finally the professional learning that our teachers need and deserve. But again, we'll go through this and walk through this in more detail on Wednesday. And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Ronald. Board, do you have any questions, comments? Mr. Castillo?
I don't have a question necessarily, but in light of all that we endured over the last year with respect to the pandemic, and frankly, at the urging of the legislature, I'd like to make a motion for the board's consideration. And I've actually got it prepared, and I think all of you have a copy of it before you. And so I'll read it because, as I understand that there is some particular language that's required as a part of the motion. So in response to legislative actions, including House Resolution 54 by Representative Mincy, SR 41 by Senator Pope, Act 47 by Representative Owen, I move the following. One, we received a report regarding results from spring 2021 assessments as presented by the superintendent. Further, I move that the board petition for a waiver of Elementary and Secondary Education Act as recently amended by the Every Student Succeeds Act requirements regarding the following as presented. Accountability and school identification requirements, which include an academic indicator based on 95% participation rate, identifying schools with comprehensive targeted and additional targeted support and improvement, and requiring that a state meaningfully differentiate all public schools for the 2021 school year, and report card provisions related to certain assessments and accountability for 2020-2021. Also, direct the BESE executive director to submit a petition to the U.S. Department of Education pursuant to the determination by the State Superintendent of Education, stating that issuance of letter grades for the 2020-2021 school year would be detrimental to the state of Louisiana, and urging and requesting him to do so. And finally, conditioned upon the receipt by BESE and or the U.S. Department of Education's formal approval of the aforementioned request for a waiver of Elementary and Secondary Education Act as recently amended by the Every Student Succeeds Act, direct the LDE to present recommendations to BESE at the October 2021 BESE meeting relative to policies outlined in Bulletin 111, the Louisiana School, District, and State Accountability System, and Bulletin 133, scholarship programs concerning the issuance of letter grades for schools and school districts for the 2020-2021 school year. I so move.
Do I have a second? Like a substitute motion? Sorry, it was Dr. Davis. I didn't see this. Dr. Davis? Anybody want to discuss? Any questions? Yes,
Yes.
Mr. Garvey?
My understanding is, and I want to double check to make sure it's right, that this means we would be putting off until October the decision of whether to issue letter grades for the schools? Is that the intent of the motion?
I believe that the motion directs the executive director of BESE to submit for the waiver, which would include subgroup participation as well as SBS and letter grades as reported through the ESE plan. Now the board would have to come back around at a later date to place into bulletin the action that would have to be considered at a later date. That would have to be noted.
So we could still decide to report just locally the letter grades. This is just saying that we're not going to report it to the feds. Is that right?
That is my appreciation of the motion from Mr. Castillo. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any others? Yes, Mr. Garvey?
Yes, I do. Somewhere along the way, or several times I've heard that sometimes schools would like to get the extra money that comes with being labeled UIR or whatever the label is similar to that. Sounds like it would cut off that ability to choose to opt in. Is that true or is it not true?
No, sir, because in the action that the board previously has taken, waivers would still allow for systems to opt into that opportunity, and we do award additional support dollars based on if people have those labels, and so it would still allow for that to take place.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go on with public comment cards, so hold on to your thoughts. We have 4 comment cards, and I'd like Dr. Janet Cope to come on down, Michael Falk, Sheldon Jones, and Charles Owens. You can use the table here. There are 2 seats. You can go ahead. Mike, have a seat, please. And Jan's comment, and Representative Owens on deck, and Superintendent Sheldon Jones on deck. Thank you.
Ladies first.
Oh, he's fascinating to you, Jan. Go right ahead. Please state your name and your agency.
Janet Pope, Executive Director of the Louisiana School Boards Association. Thank you, Mr. President Castile, for your motion on a waiver. It takes courage. Appreciate that. The Louisiana School Boards Association would like to thank our teachers, our parents, our students, and our communities for their perseverance and continued commitment to public education this last school year for 2021. In what has been an extraordinary set of circumstances this past year and a half, our public school leaders in our communities have shown they are remarkable and they can adapt at a moment's notice. While the results of the spring 2021 standardized assessments did not demonstrate significantly positive improvement statewide, there were pockets of maintenance or improvement in our local communities. However, given that unprecedented disruptions to learning that occurred during the standardized testing year, excuse me, it is unlikely that the results of the spring 2021 assessment are an accurate measure of our school and our district performance. We know that Louisiana had one of the lowest participation rates in assessment history. Because of COVID, we had a higher number of our parents that did not allow their children to go to school and test. Therefore, students that did not test will receive a 0 for our public schools. We also know that good data analysis requires consistency and a lack of external influence. Given the events leading up to the 2021 testing, it is difficult to state with confidence that the test results were born from consistency and that external factors were limited. As such, we are not assured that the results are purposeful and accurate. However, we do recognize that the results may have value in assessing individual student learning. We are encouraged by tremendous work that our local school systems have put in to assess the scores of our individual students and how those scores are being translated into learning plans that are individualized and targets for the current school year. As an association, the LSBA values transparency, and we support local autonomy. We are fervent believers in accountability. I will say that again. We are believers in accountability. But we remain adamant that accountability must be consistent. It must be aligned and equitable. Considering the unprecedented events that occurred and the lack of confidence in the reliability of this data, the LSB is urging BESE and the state superintendent, Dr. Kay Brumley, to seek relief from ESSA in the form of an accountability and a reporting waiver. An accountability waiver with the criteria required by USDOE will still provide that transparency will be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pelican. Yes. Mr.
Michael Falk, Executive Director of the Louisiana Association of School Superintendents. And I have with me superintendents from every area of the state, Northeast, Northwest, Southwest, South Louisiana, river parishes. And as an association, we would like to acknowledge that the state has faced some extraordinary challenges over the last 2 years. And as an association, we support the safeguards to ensure accountability results are not fairly attributed to schools and school systems during this extraordinary year. We have considered the mandates of Act 47 and support an opinion that State Superintendent Kay Brumley issue a numerical school performance score and letter grades. These would be detrimental to the state of Louisiana. We support the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education preparing a petition for the United States Department of Education for a waiver of the requirement to publish numerical school performance scores and letter grades for schools and school districts for the 2021 school year. Also, we support a pause to implementing components of the Louisiana Elementary and Secondary Education Plan pursuant to the Every Student Succeeds Act, targeting an A in Louisiana letter grade as equivalent to mastery by 2025. We specifically support a plan to Bulletin 111, the accountability system and performance score release, that the letter grades increase partially by 5 points beginning in the 2021 school year, 2021-22 school year, going through the 23-24 school year. Madam President, that's our position on behalf of the Superintendents Association, which was unanimously supported by a large majority of superintendents.
Thank you, Mr. Falk. Next on deck, we have Superintendent Sheldon Jones and Representative Chuck Owens. Please identify yourself and your agency. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Sheldon Jones. I'm Superintendent of Schools for Parish. I'm also President of the Louisiana Association of School Superintendents. Let me begin by saying,
Yeah, that was good. Thank you.
Let me begin by saying thank you to BESE collectively as a board, Ms. Holloway, Mr. President, as well as to Superintendent Brumley and his team here at the department for all that you've done since the inception of the pandemic. You've done an excellent job in not only thinking about the best interest of our students, but keeping everyone safe. In many instances, you weren't told that you thank you often enough, but I just want you to know that we truly appreciate everything that you've done. Executive Director Mike Falk has stated the position last week. It was received by BESE as well as Superintendent Brumlin on Friday morning in a statement of support. I won't take the time to reiterate anything that Mr. Falk has said, but we'll share with you that we as an organization gave a tremendous amount of thought and input into the position statement. Each of the 69 superintendents were given an opportunity to not only reflect, but give their thoughts and their opinions, and the statement of support is a collective thought of LAS as an organization. And I know that your job as a governmental and regulatory entity is challenging. We just want you to know that we thank and appreciate you for your manager.
Thank you, Superintendent. Yes, Mr. Representative Owens.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, members. Again, Charles Owens, State Representative, District 30. I represent Vernon and more of our parishes. My voice carries anyway, right? I was coaching a basketball game at one time, youth league, and I was fussing with a player. I said, "Can you hear me?" And the ref said, "Coach, they can hear you in plain deal." So anyway, thank you for the mic. I'm the author of Act 47. Take y'all back a year ago today, we were trying to figure out how we were going to start school in these districts. And on the 26th, the hurricane hit. And I'll never forget, a few days later, Senator Kennedy came through, Governor Edwards came through a few days later, Senator Kennedy came through and was talking to us in DeRitter. He said, this just wasn't a hurricane that hit Southwest Louisiana. It cut a swipe all the way through our state, all the way up to Monroe. And so, the end result for the year became, we had 64, I guess 69 different school districts with 69 different experiences. And as we went into the special session last year, in October, we were out on the backside of actually our second hurricane, and what was rolling around in my head was how can the legislature help? And I immediately defaulted to taking the strain off of the teachers and the students and families and ultimately the school systems who work so hard to get back in school. And then they get their nose bloody right when they try to start. And then they got it bloodied again. And so Senator Fields and I had similar bills. Mine had all three, had teachers, students, and school systems. Well, Senator Fields had the first two, so I carved up those, and he went his way with his bill, and then I went my way with mine. Superintendent Brumley asked me, he said, what do you really mean by detrimental? In the language of that bill. And I put that in there because I am most concerned with the morale of the teachers and the administrators who run those schools, who work so hard every day in complicated situations. They work hard all the time in non-crazy years. And then we had a snowstorm to it. So to me, to go forward with these grades and to carry it out as per normal, it would seem like we would be measuring something no one would really understand. And to put labels on those school systems like that, it just wouldn't make any sense to me. So I appreciate your consideration. This is the other reason I came down today, is I wanted to see if y'all had any questions about what my idea behind that was and why I did it. It was because of the school systems and how hard they work. And I would like to get people back on their feet this year and let them try to get back to a place of normalcy where next year we can have measurements that mean something to people. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Representative Owen and Superintendent Jones. Appreciate it. The next person on deck. I'm sorry, any board member has a question? I'm not asking it. One moment. Yes, is it Chuck? Representative Owens.
Just briefly, I know you and I have talked a lot about this, but if you don't mind sharing with the board your concerns about the potential impact on Fort Polk and then also Barksdale and all the other military bases in Louisiana. So it's not a local issue for you, it is a statewide issue.
It is, and for New Orleans Naval Air Station and everything else. The Department of Defense, a lot of people don't realize in Louisiana, the Barksdale and Fort Polk specifically are enormous infusions of economic activity in the state. Barksdale, in Fort Polk alone, we have a $1.5 billion annual impact to the state. Barksdale is similar. Every year, the federal government gives quality of life ratings to these installations, and that goes into the mix as to how long these installations stay open, how many people they send there, in the health and welfare of those installations. And for us to get a grade that would be out of normal, that really wouldn't mean anything, other than, you know, some bureaucrat in Washington sees it, goes, oh, look, their school systems are going down. It could potentially be harmful to the state, especially northwest Louisiana and in New Orleans area too. Because Naval Air Station New Orleans is a large employer too that often gets overlooked.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anything else?
Anyone else? Thank you, Representative Owens. Yes, at the table, Ms. Caroline Romer, and another green card by Mr. Marcus Thomas, who supports the recommendation but does not wish to speak. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Yes, Ms. Romer.
Good afternoon. Is that working? Good afternoon.
That was really bad.
There, sorry. The green kind of looks green. Good afternoon, Caroline Romer, Louisiana Association of Public Charter Schools. Oftentimes when we work with our membership on such recommendations and policies, it's a mixed bag. You have schools that have very different experiences and different philosophies. And so we did not have unanimous support for not moving forward with letter grades. In fact, some of our schools are doing very well and they feel strongly that they want that information out there. But we had a larger majority that really felt like, while they support accountability, that what the pandemic has absolutely been a proof point around are the inequities that exist. And depending on the students that you are teaching, where you're located, all those sorts of things, the pandemic just became like hyper aware of those gaps, if you will. And so we do agree that for this coming year, for there to be a waiver does make sense, only in the sense, again, that it was not a fair experience for all students, and how that pandemic really impacted them. Again, connectivity, what available resources they had at home. So again, those inequities make it such that the schools, our membership, did feel that it was important to recognize that moving forward with this waiver. However, they're very proud of the fact that so many of their students did show up to take the test, and to use that data to move forward in the coming year and years ahead is really what they're focused on at this point. The comeback plan, strategy, how they're going to use their ESSER dollars, how they're going to follow their plans. They've really pivoted, and that's what they're thinking about. And again, as charters, though, we also want to highlight we have the ultimate in accountability, because when we don't meet the standard, our membership loses the privilege to serve students and to teach students. And so we would ask that as you look at this waiver, to consider that as well for those schools that you have authorized, and what that authorization is going to look like for them in their renewals in the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Romer. I have a clarifying question, if I may, Representative Owens. In regards to your bill, which was House Bill 80, Act 47, can you tell us the results of the voting?
The voting?
The vote?
I can look that up for you. I would imagine it was unanimous.
Okay, that's what we wanted to get.
I didn't get any pushback at all, but I can get you up.
No, you don't have to. We just wanted to hear that.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for all you do. Appreciate it. One of my partners. Yes, Dr. Davis?
Can you tell us how many states have requested waivers from the federal government how they're as a whole?
It's a little bit of a moving target, Dr. Davis. We made the decision here to not go out with any form of a waiver early. We thought it was really important for participation. While many states waive letter grades, et cetera, very early, including those in our surrounding geographical region. I believe it's 45 or 46. Tennessee is in the process now of submitting their waiver, so it's going to be around 45 to 46 states, I believe, that have already submitted a waiver.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Huron.
Thank you, Madam President. Just so that I'm clear, can you speak to, are all the waivers being submitted identical to one another? Do they have the same components? I know our waiver has a few different requests in it, or is everyone tailored to the state and therefore hard to compare apples to apples, or are they very similar?
Yeah, and Mr. Lambert may want to speak a little to this too, but because every state's ESSA plan is a little different, every individual waiver is a little different, but essentially the gist of Mr. Castille's motion is accomplished through the waivers that other states have or are submitting. Mr. Lambert may want to add to that.
A significant amount of what he read is also things that we're asserting that we are doing. So they would be required to be checked anyway by almost all the states. So I think Dr. Brown can describe that accurately.
Can you clarify what parts of the ESSA are actually fairly common from state to state in terms of reporting?
So there are specific items that have to be reported out, for example, like chronic absenteeism. Those types of things are in that waiver we still have to report it, but it's not necessarily part of our accountability framework. It's just information that we're putting out.
Those two bullets that Mr. Castile read were taken directly from the waiver form, which is a checkbox as he was indicating. So it's pretty standard, including the language about detrimental to the state.
Ms. Jones? Thank you. Mr. Castillo?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to, I didn't do this enough at the beginning of my remarks, and that is I want to thank the teachers and the educators and the leaders around the state of Louisiana for all of their hard work last year. While we're taking this action, we really don't want it to be lost on anyone just how difficult it was for educators. And we are so grateful for all the hard work. We know that we started the year again. We're hoping to start very differently than the way we have started, but just want to extend our incredible gratitude for all of the service last year.
Thank you. And saying that, I think we have a few superintendents here. Would you please stand? There's a handful of them with us today. Oh, I apologize. We just received this report from down below. Dr. Roman, you want to say something? I'm sorry. Daniel Esperman, please come forward. One last screen forward.
Thank you, and I apologize. Thank you. I'm Daniel Erst-Palmer, CEO of the Pelican Institute for Public Policy. We are Louisiana's free market think tank. And for those of you who don't know us, I know most of the board members, our mission is really centered around human flourishing and opportunity. So what public policies, we work a lot, obviously, with our colleagues at the legislature, what policies will allow for every individual in Louisiana to flourish and to have that opportunity to pursue a career, new opportunity, new job, whatever it may be. Education, obviously, is a significant policy area for us. So I appreciate the opportunity to share our perspective on this. And I want to echo, obviously, thanks to you all, to educators, to education leaders across the state who have stepped up in extraordinary circumstances to help our kids. And I know that's where everybody's heart is in this, to make sure we have a better opportunity for our kids, and I want to acknowledge that. I do want to express some concern about the application of the waiver. My argument would be this is a time, maybe more than ever, that parents, that communities, that policymakers need to see performance data, need to see how our kids, where our kids are, where our districts are performing. Not in any way, I think everyone understands these are extraordinary circumstances. So this is not to suggest, and I don't think it should be read as any sort of punitive process forward or any sort of interpretation of this. However, we have to know how the kids are doing. We have to know how districts are performing. If this waiver moves forward, of course, we would hope and urge that at least all of the data be posted. I know Dr. Brumley, you and I have talked about this before as well. But just wanted to speak on behalf of advocates of communities, and parents, that this data is important and school grades are really important. Accountability is important, and maybe never more so than it is right now, so we can figure out how to chart the pathway forward. So just want to certainly recommend that you consider not moving forward with this waiver and allow for as much transparency and as much accountability as we can give our kids and our communities. Thank you for the opportunity to share that.
Thank you. Mr. Garvey?
Yeah, I wanted to point out, and Mr. Spalmer, and ask Superintendent to correct me if I'm wrong, if we were to pass this, it would not prevent us from issuing letter grades locally to our local newspaper or publishing on our website all the information that you could conceivably think necessary and helpful. Isn't that what we talked about and you confirmed earlier?
This, yeah, in our previous exchange, this is a waiver to the feds. This will have to come back as notice at a later date where you will ultimately make local decisions around this. But this is that waiver. And just as another point to this, I mean, I think that I would like to be very upfront in my hope that this is simply a 1-year pause, and that the accountability model that we have, and that hopefully will be further improved over upcoming days. This is just a 1-year pause for a waiver because of unprecedented conditions.
Mr. Garvey?
I have a question.
1 second. Is it pertaining? I have someone that's had her hand up. Please, Ms. Bochin.
Okay, piggybacking a little bit on what Mr. Castile started, from the very beginning of all of this, and superintendents in this room, as well as every superintendent in the state of Louisiana, strongly endorsed that we test all of our students this year. That the teachers endorsed it, the superintendents endorsed it, the school boards endorsed it, and everyone did, because we all want to know where our kids stand amid this pandemic, what has happened as a result of the pandemic, the hurricanes, and everything else we've had. But I think they've endorsed it for the right reasons. And the reasons are to inform instruction. The reasons are to let every parent know how their child is doing. All of the data has been made available and will continue to be made available to every group. We've begun with some higher level data. We're going to be seeing where our students stand in terms of unsatisfactory approaching basic and so on. So we will know, every parent will know how their child did on the test. Every school is going to know, every community is going to know, every school system is going to know. And from that data, the intervention plans are being developed, and that's under Dr. Brumley's leadership with Louisiana Combat, where we are all developing plans based on this data. How do we intervene with kids? How do we close those gaps? We got some very valuable information from this data. We looked at virtual learning as opposed to in-person learning. We saw a 15% gap. And the gaps were really more pronounced at the lower levels, which just reinforced what we felt intuitively. When you take 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7, 8, and 9, who are learning to read, where that skill needs to be built, unless you have got an extremely supportive home environment and an adult almost being a co-teacher with that child, virtual learning is not as effective. That in-person learning is tremendously needed. And if you go through what educators went through this past year, not only did you see the beginning of the school year in a virtual mode, and then possibly in hybrid mode, then you saw teachers having to remove themselves from classrooms because of positivity rates, are being close contacts. Or you've had children out in 3-4 different times during the year designated as close contacts, up to 10 to 14 days at a time. So the results of this data are more important for a student on an individual basis and to that parent in that school and that community to develop a plan. This conversation around letter grades to me is disingenuous. It's the kind of thing where, well, okay, let's just slap it A, B, C, D. That to me is almost irrelevant at this point. What we really need to do is to see where the gaps are, what kids need more interventions, how we're going to use the dollars to address that and continue to get kids to grow. And we all need to get together behind that initiative. And that's where, I mean, Representative Owen talked about the military bases and how that could be a negative reflection on the community. Business and industry should be looking at the same thing. As you're attracting businesses into your communities and into your state, and you're looking at educational data, then let's look at educational data based on improvement of kids. This almost should be considered when we should be thinking, and you're talking about think tanks or whatever, this data should be looked at as our new baseline. This is our new baseline. This is where kids are now because of all these things that have happened over the past, not only 1 year. This is now the 3rd school year that's been impacted. In March of 2020, we closed down for 9 weeks. Last year, we were operating under tremendously different circumstances. This year, we're starting out, and in our school systems, we are quarantining more kids in this past week than I did almost in 9 weeks last year. So we have got to take those things and we've got to decide what are the best educational practices to use to address these situations. That's where we should be thinking. That's where the experts should be getting together, where our educators should be getting together. What are the best practices that we can do to address these kids and where these gaps are? So that should be the thought process around all of this. And we should all band together in that initiative to see what we can do that's in the best interest of our children.
Thank you, Ms. Bocek.
So I have a question about how the community is going to know. So I'm a parent and I receive my child's scores in the mail. So I know how he's doing and I'm so happy that we had the test and that I have this information about my child. And Ms. Bocek referenced that the community is going to know. I guess that's my question is how does the community know to what level of detail and what the timeline is on it?
Well, I believe, Dr. Brophy, some of that would be contingent upon further action of the board. This is the initial waiver request to the federal government. But what we have communicated out is that, you know, all of the information that we would have available to us, all of those data points, we would make available publicly on our website. And some of that certainly would be housed on the school finder website, but also on the data center that we have at the Department of Education that has all of the different data points available. And our intent is to do that regardless of further action, because, you know, we had committed very early that we want as many students to test as possible, so we get information that we would publicly place that raw data available to the general public.
So let's say we support this waiver, then the waiver gets approved by the U.S. Department of Education. We'll come back in October and have, I'm sure, a similar item about what we plan to do relative to the letter grades. Let's say the board votes to where we don't have the letter grade, we don't give out letter grades for the previous school year. Do you anticipate the same level of data would be available on LouisianaSchools.com minus the letter grade? Like, have you guys brainstormed about the depth of that data?
Yeah, actually, yes. And we can make all of that available as in any other year. So yeah, you're right.
Thank you.
Mr. Morris?
First of all, I want to thank everyone, I guess, as far as Mr. Castillo and Mr. Espalmer as well, for expanding the conversation just beyond the initial motion, which was what to do with the information with regards to reporting to the federal government. As I understand the timeline now, the board will hear this topic again in October and make some decision with regard to what we'll do with the data in terms of the state at that point. So I want to follow Mr. Castillo's comment first and just say, we love our teachers. The fact that they're not compensated at the Southern Regional average is beyond my comprehension, particularly based on my experience in the classroom in the last year. Watching a teacher, first of all, brave the unknown, that situation initially, and then to see a teacher walk around the classroom with a laptop in one hand, with a mask on her face, trying to teach two groups of kids at the same time, and those kids have a mask on their face. How you can teach in that environment is, just overwhelming. So, just want to, again, get that out there. We love our teachers, we appreciate our teachers. And the conversation around accountability, clearly, this situation is not a finger pointing exercise. Where to find blame, where to find fault for whatever. It's an incredible situation that everybody on the planet is facing. This is not a fault finding activity. It's not a finger pointing activity. I've been thinking about it, giving it a great deal of thought myself. I want to put it out there that for consideration, what we're going through right now, is this really an anomaly, particularly for people who live where we do in South Louisiana? Is this an anomaly that we're going through, or are we going to be in the same situation this time next year? Is it going to be the next virus? Is it going to be the next variant? What's the case going to be? We've learned a lot through this experience. We've learned that flexibility is important. We still have to provide the best possible education for our children. We still need to focus on the outcomes. So, just challenge people to think about the lens that we're looking through. Is this a lens where this is the ordinary now? This is what we should plan for? And understand that it's not ideal conditions, but we still have to work through it. And we still need the transparency, I think both at the individual level, community level, to understand where we are. And there's still an expectation by this board that we're going to prepare children to be set up for success, to complete in an ever increasingly global economy. More and more people working remotely, enjoying that flexibility, appreciating that flexibility. The global economy is going to be more and more significant, particularly for our young learners now. And we need to be able to adapt. So just once again, I want to thank everyone for their comments and expanding upon the initial conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Anyone else? No other comments? Thank you, Mr. Brown. And everyone else. Thank you, David Department. All right. We'll move forward. Anyone opposed to the motion? Motion carried. Next item, please.
That concludes the agenda.
Meeting is over. Thank you, everyone, for coming to our meeting today on retreat. We'll be back in the morning, 9 o'clock. Thank you.